everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, then hello, my name is Millie, and about 5 months ago now I did a video just like this one but introducing a few books that I wanted to read over the coming months. Now what I thought was going to be 2 months has obviously turned into 5 now, since I'm finally getting around to doing my full review on these books, but there is a reason for it. So if you haven't seen that first video that I mentioned, I will link it up here. I'm basically just introducing all of the books that I have read and my reasons behind why I have read these books. So a brief summary: I have only ever really read, before these ones, I've only ever really read lovey-dovey, boy meets girl, they fall in love, they live happily ever after kind of books. I love the Chocolate Lovers Club, I love the Shopaholic series, I love P.S. I Love You, you know, things like that that are just really predictable, really sort of surface level. They're not very deep, they are just really easy books to read. But I feel like I moved on from that stage of reading books and I wanted something that challenged me a little bit more, so I got some recommendations from friends and a few book clubs that I follow online, and I picked up 10 books. Now I have only read 7 of them, but there is a reason for that and I will get into that, but these are the books that I picked up. So like I said, there was 10, I've only read 7 of them, and I will talk you through what I thought of all of these books and if I would recommend them to you. So the very first one that I read was Normal People by Sally Rooney, and I really wasn't expecting this book to be like how it was. I thought because they made it into a TV show, I thought that it was going to be a little bit more than just a lovey-dovey boy meets girl kind of book. And although it does have these other themes running through it, there is depression, there is drug abuse, there is family issues, all real life issues, but I just felt like it was a little bit predictable. It was still very much a boy meets girl kind of book, and I predicted everything as it happened and nothing surprised me in it. Nothing happened that I wasn't expecting, and that was quite disappointing. I will just mention here that I did go on to watch the TV show and I absolutely loved the TV show. I thought that it was brilliant, but the book, I was just expecting a little bit more. The way that I would describe this book is, I think I would have really enjoyed it when I was 16 or 17. I feel like now at 26, nearly 27, I feel like it was just a little bit childish for me and a little bit like teenage, you know, in their first relationship, and when the book starts they are in school and when it finishes they have left university, so it does sort of span that wide age range of the characters, but I felt like I was still very much reading a book that was too young for me. I would recommend this book if you are sort of 16, 17, 18 and, you know, maybe going out into the world and going to university and doing all of those things, but I feel like at my age I just felt like it was a little bit boring because I felt I didn't really connect with the characters all that much, because I felt like it was almost like I wanted to shake the characters and say, when you are my age, this won't matter, but I shouldn't be feeling that when the characters ended up being my age at the end of the book. I just felt like it was a little bit immature for me. So for that reason, I would give Sally Rooney Normal People a 6 out of 10. I would say that definitely if you are of that younger age range, like late teens, then it is definitely one that you will probably really enjoy, but for my age at 26, I just felt like it was a little bit immature for me. So the next 2 books that I read were The Silent Patient and The Family Upstairs. The reason I say the next 2 is because I can't actually remember which order I read them in, because I read both of these books in 3 days. It took me a day and a half to read each of these books. They were amazing, both of them. But I will start with The Silent Patient. This is by Alex Michaelides. Michaelides? I don't know how to say the name, I'm sorry. But amazing book. I think that this will be my read of 2020. It was so good. So it follows the story of a woman called Alicia who murders her husband, and her psychiatric doctor, I think that's what they called him, and he was trying to get Alicia to speak because she hasn't spoken since she murdered her husband. There is a plot twist. I'm not going to say what it is, and I absolutely did not predict it. All the way through, it was drip feeding you all this information about the characters, obviously, as a book does, but I didn't predict it. I thought it was absolutely amazingly written. There was a bit in the middle, I will warn you, I have a fear of eyes, and there was a bit in the middle where I had to get Phil to read forward in the book and basically just give me an overview of what happened, because something happens with eyes. I'm not going to go into that, but the character development and the way that it's written was so amazing. It absolutely gripped me from the first chapter. I wanted to know what happened, and I wanted to know more about the characters. I just thought it was absolutely amazing. I would give this a 10 out of 10. I absolutely recommend that everybody reads it because it was so good. And it doesn't have, although it has love story elements in it, obviously Alicia murders her husband, so there's that whole dynamic of going back into her past and figuring out her relationship with her husband, and then there is the relationship between the psychiatric doctor and his wife, and all of these different relationships. It doesn't really focus on that. It's more about like the mental space that the characters are in and the development of that, and I just thought it was absolutely amazing. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Definitely recommend. And then the other one that I read, I think I read The Silent Patient first and then this one. So this is The Family Upstairs by Jewell. This was another one that I read really quickly. I think it took me like a day and a half because I just got completely hooked with the characters and the story, and it was one of those where I just needed to know what happened. One thing I would say about this is there's a lot of characters in it, and you quickly get to know a lot about each of the characters, and I felt like at points I had to keep going back and refamiliarizing myself with various characters, even though I'd only just read about them like an hour or so before. Like, the story was moving so quickly and there was so much happening that I felt like there were at points too many characters to be keeping up with. The whole story is about a little girl who gets left in a house, and 3 adults are found dead in the kitchen, and they don't know how they died, and they think that it's a suicide pact, I think that's what they called it, where they all took poison and committed suicide. And the story comes out about the older children, because each of the other families, they all have children, and then there's the 3 children of the family that originally lived there, and then there's other characters that the children meet when they're older, and then some of those children go on to have children. It was a little bit confusing at times, and trying to keep up with all of those characters did mess with my head a little bit. But most of the characters were necessary. I do feel like some of them could have been forgotten. Maybe I missed the point of them. Maybe they were there for a purpose, but I felt like they were just put in to fluff a little bit. But the story and the development of like the main characters, which were the 3 children that were originally in the house, was amazing, and finding more out about the 3 dead adults that they found in the kitchen and how they got to be there and where all of the other children went, because they just disappeared and nobody knew where they went. I just felt like it was a really gripping book, and another one that I would definitely recommend. I would give this one a 9 out of 10 just because I did feel like the characters were a little bit confusing. Maybe that was just me. I know that a lot of people recommended this to me, and I have seen this on a lot of the book club like Facebook pages and Instagram pages and things that I'm on, so I know that a lot of people have really loved this, and I did really love it, but I just felt like it was a little bit confusing with all of the different characters. So those 3 books that I have just mentioned, I read all of those in about a week. I read those really quickly, and I thought, great, I'm gonna get all of these books read in a month probably, and I will be able to film this video really quickly, and then I can get another load of books, and I was really looking forward to doing that. And then I picked up this book. So this is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is another one that I'd read a lot of really good reviews for, and indeed it has really good reviews. I mean, Stephen Fry said that it's painfully funny. Jonathan Ross says it's heartbreaking. Like, it's got really good reviews, and from what I've read online, loads of people really love it. And I thought, especially with everything that's going on at the minute with the NHS, which is still going on, and when I filmed that first video I didn't think we would still be in this predicament 5 months later, but here we are. I read 9 pages of this book, and it took me a week. I just could not get into it. So it is structured like a diary. So it's like Friday the 29th, and that is the bit of the diary from Friday the 29th. And all the way through it has little star things next to medical words and medical conditions, and it then relates to them at the bottom of the page to let you know what those medical conditions are and why it's affected that patient in that way. I just felt like I was reading a medical journal, like I was learning how to be a doctor. And although there were parts of it where it was very funny, and you know, they're extracting things out of people's bottoms and dealing with drunk patients and all things that I'm 100% sure doctors have to put up with every single day, as somebody who really has no interest in being a doctor, I just felt like it was such a chore to read. I didn't have any interest in picking it up. There's no backstory to who this doctor is. I believe it's like a biography, sort of. I think it's Adam Kay who's the author, who is also the doctor. See, I don't even know. Like, I have no idea. I just didn't get into it at all, and I wanted to because I'd read such good reviews, and you know, I wanted to learn more about what it's like to be a doctor and you know, all of these different things, but I just couldn't do it. So after a week of getting through 9 pages, I gave up, and you know, I skipped into the middle and tried to like progress the book a little bit and read a few pages. I just found that I couldn't get into it. I just felt like it was a bit technical for me, I suppose, and I maybe do want a little bit more of that lovey-dovey backstory, or any kind of backstory. It was just like I was reading his diary, and I know that that's the point of it, but I didn't really enjoy it. So I'm sure that it's a brilliant book if it's something that you're interested in. However, I just don't have the interest, and I didn't finish it, and I hate not finishing books, but I didn't finish it. So the next book that I read is Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I absolutely loved this. It did take me a while to pick this up because I just fell out of love with reading after I'd picked up the other one, and I thought I just need a little bit of a break, and I thought this, out of all of the books that I picked up, I thought that this would just be the perfect mindless read that I wanted at that time. It wasn't completely mindless, it isn't a love story. So Eleanor Oliphant is obviously the main character in it, and there is a plot twist. I won't tell you what it is, I did not expect it. She does meet a boy, I do believe he's called Ray. Oh, it's so long ago since I read this. Is he called Ray? I think he's called Ray. I can't remember. It's so long since I've read this one now. But anyway, she does meet this boy. She doesn't fall in love with him. They just become friends. And he tries to find out things about her mother and her past. And she doesn't want anything to do with it. She goes to therapy and she's talking about her mother and her past and all of these things. And she drinks 2 bottles of vodka every weekend. I think it's 2 bottles. Is it 2 bottles? Yeah, 2 bottles of vodka to drink every weekend. Oh, it is so brilliant, this book, and I can't believe I've not read it before because I've been aware of it for so long. But I really, really would recommend this. It isn't your standard lovey-dovey boy meets girl and they fall in love kind of book, but it is less than like The Family Upstairs and The Silent Patient. Like, it's not that level of like thriller kind of book, but it is more than a lovey-dovey kind of book. I just think the balance between the sort of psychological things that the characters are going through and also the relatable things that like I could relate to, I just think it's a wonderful book. I would say that this is the kind of book that I would recommend somebody take on holiday with them. This is the kind of book that you could absolutely just read by the pool and get caught in with all of the characters and read it really quickly. I read this one really, really quickly. I think it took me like a week, but it is quite a chunky book. Really, really loved it. I would give this one a 9 out of 10. I thought that it was brilliant. So the next book that I read is The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. I will just say that this is a lovey-dovey book, and it was recommended to me by one of my good friends from school, but I thought that it was going to be a little bit more. Similarly to Normal People, I thought that because my friend had recommended it, I thought that it would be a little bit deeper than just a lovey-dovey story, and I did feel like it was a little bit sort of surface level, predictable. As soon as I got like quarter of the way through the book, I had predicted what would happen, and indeed I was completely correct in everything that happened in the book, which is fine. I don't mind that kind of book, but I was sort of wanting to steer away from that a little bit, but there we go. So it follows Tiffy and Leon, and they share a flat, but not only do they share a flat, there's only one bed in the flat. So Leon works nights and Tiffy works during the day, so they have a rule where they each have the house like 12 hours of the day, I think it's something like that anyway, and so they share a bed and they communicate to each other through leaving post-it notes around the house, and you can tell as the story goes on that they are growing sort of fond of each other, and that the post-it notes are becoming more and more personal, and they are getting to know each other more even though they've never met. And then when they do finally meet, they fall in love and live happily ever after. I do believe that's what happens at the end. I don't think they fall out of love. But there is another lovely little storyline that runs through it where Leon is trying to find the boyfriend of somebody that is on his ward at the hospital that he works at, and he goes all around the country trying to find Jonathan White, is it? I think that was his name. It was something like that. Johnny White, that does ring a bell. So he's trying to find this Johnny White that one of his patients knew in the war so that they can say their final goodbyes, and it's just a really, really lovely book. It's really sort of heartwarming and very sweet, and you definitely fall in love with the characters, and I felt like I definitely related to a lot of moments in the book where maybe one of the characters wants to meet and one of the other characters doesn't, and yeah, it's just a really, really lovely book. I definitely would recommend it. For what I was wanting with these books, it's not really what I was wanting, but in terms of just having a mindless lovey-dovey read, I would definitely say that it is a very, very good book. It's very easy to read, it's written very well, but it's just very surface level, and for that reason I would give it a 7 out of 10. So then after The Flat Share, I fell off the face of the earth with reading books. I didn't pick up a book for about a month, and that's just not like me at all. I always like to have something to read. So then I picked up Blood Orange by Harriet Tyce, and this took me quite a while to get into. It follows the story of Alison, and she is a barrister. I think that's her sort of level in the law sort of hierarchy. And she is married and she has a little girl called Matilda, and she is not a very good mother. She gets drunk all the time, she works long hours, her husband is basically a stay-at-home parent and a single parent like a lot of the time, and she's also having an affair with her boss, I suppose, like the guy that's above her in the hierarchy of the chambers, I suppose. And he's called Patrick, and they are having this secret affair, and it just took me so long to get into. I would say that for me, I felt like this book was really, really slow up until 20 pages before the end, and when it started getting good, it just finished, and I felt like I wanted that little end section like halfway through, and I just felt like there was a lot of fluff at the start of the book and it didn't really get the story going anywhere. The last 20 pages definitely made up. I mean, I can't remember if it was exactly 20 pages, it was the last like session of reading definitely made up for the lack of anything happening earlier on in the book. It was very easy to read. The story was, you know, progressing, but it was just like, this happened on Tuesday and then this happened on Wednesday, and there was a whole section. So the main character Alison is working with her boss Patrick on a case with a client called Madeline, and she just completely disappeared for a whole section of the book. You didn't hear anything about this case, and the case was really interesting and you sort of learnt a lot about it in the first part of the book, and then you didn't hear anything about it in like the whole midsection of the book, and then suddenly something happens and everything happens in the case, and then everything happens in like Alison's personal life at the end of the book, and I just felt like there was a whole section in the middle where it was just fluffy, and I didn't learn anything about any of the characters. I didn't learn anything about what was going to happen later on in the book, and I just felt like it was very, like it was dragging on a bit, and like I didn't really have the drive to pick it up like I did with the other books. It probably took me about a month to read this book because halfway through I just didn't have the drive to pick it up. I didn't want to continue with the story. I didn't feel connected with any of the characters, and I just thought it got really good reviews and I didn't know where these reviews came from. If I was basing my review on the last half of the book, I would say absolutely like 9 out of 10. It was really, really good, but because the first half I feel like it just wasted so much of my time, because although I was reading it slowly, I was reading it slowly because I just didn't have the drive to read it quickly. I would probably have to give this one like a 6 out of 10. It was readable, the story was good, but I felt like I had to force myself to keep picking it up. So then the last 3 in that reading list that I did before are these ones. So this is the Rosie Project by Graeme Simison, the Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, and Possession by S Byatt. I honestly just have no desire to pick any of these up. If I don't have a instant draw to thinking that that's the story that I want to read, I know that I won't get into it and I won't want to pick it up. And at this moment in time, I'm just not feeling like any of these are the book that I want to read at the moment. I do have a whole other pile that I am collating currently of books that I want to read next, and I have 8 so far that I will talk about in another video if you want to see that. But yeah, I have 8 books so far. I think I want to pick up another couple before I do a whole video on them, but I just feel like I am drawn to every single one of those 8 that I've picked up, and I don't necessarily want to read any of these 3 that I picked up before, unfortunately. But I'm going to keep them all, and I'm not going to throw any of them away. I will read them at some point. I'm just not drawn to them right now, so I know that I won't read them. So that is my full review on all of those books that I picked up from before. If you have any recommendations for me from the ones that I've said that I really liked, or any that you think that I will really enjoy that I haven't mentioned here, then please leave them in the comment section down below. I am still looking for another couple of books for my next reading list. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Bye!